Well, welcome, everybody. It's another chuckle-filled adventure with the Journal of Lifestyle Medicine podcast. I'm here with one of my favorite people, Sara Makin. This whole podcast series, what we're doing now is to help you deal with the pandemic. These things that we talk about in each episode are the products and the services, and indeed the people that I turn to help me keep my health, not just during the pandemic, but with any kind of a situation. So I wanted to introduce you to Sara Makin. She is, quite honestly, somebody who's helped me very, very much. She helped me deal with some childhood PTSD in an extremely unique way. And that was that she, aside from doing the traditional kinds of therapy and new therapies and new technologies, she also helps to diagnose people with things that are on the state's list of qualifying conditions to get their medical marijuana card. And with that diagnosis, I went to a certifying physician and I was able to get my card and now have access to high quality medicinal marijuana, which has been a great help for me, in addition to some of the other things that she does. But she's really one of the best, and I say this not trying to blow any smoke, Sara, she's one of the best, if not the best, mental health professional I've ever been to. Professional, caring, loving. I left the office on the first visit feeling very uplifted and very positive about things. Sara, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thank you for such a nice intro. Well, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for such a nice introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. You're most welcome. What we want to talk about today is how to deal with this pandemic. And of course, from a mental health perspective, the biggest thing that we want to talk about is how to build resilience. I want to use that word, resilience. You opened between the time of college and when you opened your practice, you did a lot of research. You were a research person. And that's one thing that really impressed me. And now everything you do is evidence-based. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that makes your practice different?
Oh, yeah, I would love to talk about that. And that's a great question. So before I started Makin Wellness about 3 years ago, I was conducting research at Duquesne University. And at my previous role, I was a counselor as well as an outcome specialist, which basically meant, I spent a lot of time researching and learning about different effective techniques and modalities for different mental health and addiction conditions. So I spent a lot of time learning about what was effective, what wasn't, and what didn't work, what worked and what didn't work. So whenever I started my practice, I was really devoted to making sure that we implemented modalities that were supported by research to be effective instead of traditional psychoanalysis or other types of treatment modalities that have been popular, but perhaps not very effective. Because our whole mentality is about what can we do to genuinely help people and what's going to help people heal faster rather than what's going to help, but after like 20 or 30 visits, we want to, we want to start helping people within the first several sessions.
Well, I think the real core of the problem is most people are in therapy or seeking a mental health professional many times because of traumas in the past and the damage that is done to our nervous system. And traditional therapies have tended to just re-traumatize you every time you want to go in and talk about that trauma. But you don't. You do something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to tell us what that is? We're going to keep it a secret.
It's a secret. Just kidding. All of our providers are trauma-informed professionals, meaning that they have been specifically trained in how to conduct effective trauma treatment. And That is one of the biggest things that definitely sets us apart. We also use something called cognitive behavioral therapy, and basically it is an evidence-based form of treatment that has us really analyzing and seeing what type of thoughts and thinking patterns you have and how we can work towards changing them and how we can work towards changing the neural pathways in your brain.
Well, let's talk about then resilience and what exactly that is, and how, as you heal these traumas, permanently heal them and not just relive them every time, how that healing affects the nervous system.
That's a great question. So when someone has experienced a lot of trauma, they tend to have more of an overreactive nervous system, meaning that things that shouldn't cause them to go into fight or flight will. Many times it'll be triggered by different sounds or smells or different things they see on TV or different things that they hear about. So when we start to really work towards addressing these traumas, people tend with time to become more relaxed and the nervous system is more regulated.
So we don't get triggered into reacting in a way that's far out of proportion to the actual trigger.
Exactly. We end up responding to situations rather than reacting.
Another thing I think is important for people to realize is we call it the fight or flight process or system, but it's actually fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
And many people get stuck in the freeze part and they don't think they're fleeing or fighting. They're just frozen. Is that a big part of what ails people?
Yeah, it definitely can be. And that is something that a lot of people don't really know about, that freeze is definitely part of one of the reactions. And that can just be freezing physically or also even freezing emotionally and not feeling like you can move or speak or say anything.
Yeah. So what we want to talk about today are things that help build that resilience.
Yes.
That prevent you from overreacting to triggers. And we're certainly in a time right now when there's some pretty serious triggers out there. So we don't want to be overreacting.
Exactly.
Like my kitty is here.
Is that kitty No-No?
This kitty No-No. She is one of my, one of the ways that helps me build resilience.
Yeah. Well, animals are very comforting to be around and, can definitely support you emotionally. And they're very intuitive too. Like, if they know if you're not feeling very well, they'll come and comfort you.
She definitely does that. Yeah, she definitely does. So one of the biggest things that when we talk about these tools and ways to help build the resilience is breathing. The first most important thing for people to practice and understand and know how to do is belly breathing. Do you want to talk some about that?
Absolutely. So typically in Western culture, we live and we're in the US right now, a lot of people here tend to breathe from their chest. And when you breathe from your chest, you actually do not get enough, your body doesn't get enough oxygen. You're actually designed to breathe from your belly. And if you put an infant on its back and you look at the infant, you'll notice that the belly of the infant goes up and down. And that is actually the way that we were designed to breathe. When we do the more deep belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, you actually bring in about 3 to 4 times as much oxygen as you would compared to whenever you're doing chest breathing. It can help to reduce your resting heart rate and can help to reduce your blood pressure as well. So your belly should be moving up and down while you're breathing. And if you're noticing that your pants are too tight or people prohibit you from that, I would suggest for you to get, pants or like wear clothes that you can actually do this type of breathing in. Yeah. Because it makes a big difference, especially for people that have PTSD or some form of anxiety or increased stress levels. This is extremely important. You can reduce your heart rate by doing this type of breathing. It obviously takes time, but it's absolutely possible. So it can physically help to relax you while you're doing that.
it's interesting that when you're in fear, that you really are only breathing from the chest up, and you see a lot of people breathing like this.
Yeah.
And that one of the things I've learned over my years of doing these kinds of podcasts and publishing information about this is that each breath, each kind of breath has an emotion that's attached to it. And each emotion has a breath that's attached to it. Mm-hmm. So that deep belly breathing is a breath that triggers for your body, okay, it's time to relax. And the cool little trick is that you can, if you're breathing, if you have an emotion, you'll notice that your breath changes to match that emotion. Mm-hmm. It works in one direction, but if you breathe a certain way, you will bring on the emotion that's attached to that breath. As in the belly breath, you become more relaxed and more oxygen, and your heartbeat slows down. Mm-hmm. Have you had any experience with this, or have any evidence around this in any of your research?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, for a lot of people, it's the association that they have when they breathe in a certain way, that they tend to feel a certain way. And I definitely agree with you with, sometimes if we focus on getting the breathing right, then the emotion will then follow.
The other cool thing about breathing is that it's the only set of muscles, or it's the only function of the body that works both consciously and unconsciously. I mean, you can choose to breathe in any way you wish, but if you forget to breathe, your body's going to breathe anyway for you. Mm-hmm. And this, in the mystical traditions, that's why they emphasize breathing so much, is because that is your link between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And they've developed many different kinds of breathing patterns and techniques that will actually open that doorway even more. Have you done any research in that direction? I'm putting you on the spot here. I know.
That's a great question. That is something that I haven't looked very deeply into, but based upon my experience and based upon what we've seen with our clients, if someone gets to a place where they're able to relax themselves more and then either set an intention or then start to do affirmations, it seems to be it seems to stick a lot more easily. So I don't have any solid research that I can refer and reflect right now, but based upon what I've seen, it's very helpful. It's very helpful for sure. Yeah.
That's your next project then.
Yes, that is my next project. I will look into it. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that we talk, or you talk a lot about, I've seen you on other podcasts doing this very same kind of conversation, is movement and exercise. You want to talk some about that?
Oh, absolutely. So exercise is a great way to get your body to release naturally feel good chemicals. And one thing that I always talk about, with our clients and with our team and with everyone, is that it's really important to do a form of exercise that you genuinely enjoy. Right. So whatever type of exercise that feels good to you, whatever, makes you excited, makes you look forward to it, do that. Every single day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes of movement. We're not designed to be sitting, especially at this point now where we're, most of the world is under some level of quarantine. It's really important that we get up and move, especially if we're sitting a lot more than what we normally are. And it also helps to prevent depression and feelings of depression, and also anxiety as well whenever we exercise.
I have a friend from high school that he was always a runner in high school. He was on all the track teams and everything. And a couple of years ago, he told me that he knows that no matter how bad his day was, or how awful or how depressed or anxious he was feeling, he knew if he put his sneakers on and went out running, within 20 minutes, he was feeling fine and feeling good. And he just loved to run. Mm-hmm. And that was his happy place. So it is a real physical release of dopamine and some of the other feel-good chemicals, but there's
Mhm.
also a kind of a metaphysical aspect to it. Yes?
Mhm. It definitely can be. Yeah.
And I think,
Some people say that it helps to release energy that gets stored in the body too.
right. Well, I think it's an important point what you said, that you want to do something that you enjoy doing.
Yes.
That's a chore. Um, and I think that uh, when you talk about movement, it's not just physical movement sometimes, especially when we're cooped up in here. It's also like mental and emotional movement.
Hmm.
In other words, if you're just wallowing and not doing anything but just fretting, that's not good.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
It
get up
the
and do something.
Yeah, the idea of kind of transmutation, or the idea of taking perhaps this negative emotion that you're feeling and having this intention of letting it go. Maybe using that in the beginning as a level of motivation, but then having the intention of, okay, well, whether you're, I don't know, like doing your bicep curls or in a different types of, yoga positions, like having the intention of, okay, I'm letting this go. It's not serving me, and letting this go. And some people have a much easier time doing that while they're exercising. And a lot of people seem to have an even easier time with doing that when they're doing yoga.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about yoga because it is one of those practices that at its very core is very good for building resilience.
Oh, absolutely. It's great because you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because it's mind exercise and also physical exercise as well. You have to, while you're doing yoga, it's very important for you to have the appropriate, postures in place, and making sure your hands are in the right position. But also you're holding these positions for such a long period of time that it requires a lot of mindfulness and a lot of your mind to tell your intention is. It can be very helpful to start to incorporate some level of yoga.
Yeah, the word yoga itself actually means union, and it's all about the union of the mind and the body. And like we talked about with breath, um, each posture of the body, each way that you hold yourself is kind of indicative of an emotion or brings on a certain emotion. You were on a podcast last week where you talked about when you're doing your belly breathing, you want to be looking up. Tell us about
Yes.
that. That was really fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So that, for anyone who is struggling with any type of negative emotion, or even if you want to prevent negative emotion from coming on, one of the most powerful things that you can do is go outside every single day for a walk, preferably in nature if possible, with really good posture and looking up and out and practicing your diaphragmatic breathing. So the reason why this is so helpful is you're getting the vitamin D naturally from the sun, which our skin absorbs vitamin D much more easily than our digestive system absorbs it from food. You're getting the fresh air. Whenever you have good posture, you tend to feel better. And whenever you look up and out, it's more difficult for you to think internally and to think about yourself and a lot of kind of negative things in your life. You tend to externalize and then tend to look at things outside of you more. So all of those things combined, about 30 minutes a day, especially if you're struggling with depression, if you can force yourself to start to do this, it's extremely powerful and very healing. And the positive effects just of doing that are really fantastic.
It is so important to get that vitamin D from the sun.
Oh,
And
yeah.
a lot of people suffer from what they call the seasonal affectation disorder. If I have that right?
Oh,
SAD.
yes. It's seasonal affective disorder.
Effective.
Yeah.
And it literally is because we don't have enough vitamin D in our system. So
Yeah.
during the wintertime, especially in our latitudes, November through February especially, it really is good to take some extra vitamin D.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, we have a nutritional counselor, and anytime we have a client who has depression or seasonal affective disorder, we recommend them to see her. And almost always, she has them take some sort of potent fish oil, vitamin D, magnesium.
Those are three big ones.
Yeah, and it's extremely helpful. And, it's not even just, the, mainstream psychiatrists are starting to pick up on this as well. And they're starting to realize the connection between vitamin D deficiencies and depression or seasonal affective disorder. And so now I'm hearing about psychiatrists implementing that as well, which is something really major and really exciting, really.
Well, it really shows that you're on top of the evidence-based research because, like you said, you have a nutritionist on staff. Talk about some of the important major points about nutrition that you want to follow to help out with anxiety and depression.
Oh, absolutely. And there are certain conditions that may be worse when you have nutritional deficiencies, which is why we have our amazing nutritional counselor, Laura, on staff. Especially with depression, many times, again, like we mentioned, it could be a big vitamin D deficiency. Sometimes people who have bipolar disorder are having a lot of aspartame in their diet, or anyone with a lot of mood swings can be having excessive amounts of aspartame and different things like that. And that is much more of Laura's specialty than mine because she's formally trained in it. So she has a lot of information to share about that. But it's really important to do your absolute best to make sure that you're eating a natural diet, having fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, organic, if possible, fresh, if possible. Fresh is better than frozen, but frozen is still better than canned. Having your smoothies, having your supplementation, but be careful with your supplementation, you guys. You should really see someone who knows what they're doing. It is possible to take too many vitamins and to take the wrong mix of vitamins. So you want to make sure that you consult with a professional who knows what they're doing, who can help you out with that.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people think about nutrition, the first thing that's like they start to dread all the things I have to cut out of my diet. Like you've said coffee can actually be a big trigger for anxiety.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The caffeine, anytime you have caffeine, your body starts to create and release cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Mm-hmm. So, and especially at our downtown location, we see tons of professionals and executives that are already extremely stressed out. And they have their coffee in the morning and then coffee, during the day. You're secreting more and more and more cortisol. So if you struggle with any type of anxiety or excessive amounts of stress, you really shouldn't have caffeine. Mm. It makes it so much worse. We've had clients before that we basically found out that the reality of what was going on was too much caffeine. So we helped to get them off of caffeine. And then once they were in recovery from the caffeine addiction, then they were feeling so much better. So it's really important. If you're stressed out, if you're anxious, if you're concerned about what's going on in the world, I would highly suggest for you to replace your cup of coffee in the morning with something decaf or with something else that's not as caffeinated, and slowly start to cut down. And to consider that caffeine is a stimulant to some extent. Some people consider it to be a drug. And so discontinuing it immediately is very difficult for most people. So following a harm reduction model, meaning start to cut back a bit every single week until you're not using that anymore, that substance. Yeah. This being the caffeine.
Well, I know personally, if you go cold turkey, it can really bring on some massive headaches. Oh
my gosh, yeah, headaches. Some people get like shaky and sweaty and very irritable, very moody. Then another thing that we've noticed is many times when people cut back on the caffeine, they aren't taking the caffeine, then they start craving sugar out of nowhere.
Well, that was my next point, sugar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sugar's not a good thing just across the board. I mean, how does it affect the nervous system? How does it?
It's not good for it. It's not good for it, is what it is. It's absolutely terrible. The good news, though, is that there's so many different replacements now. I mean, there's coconut sugar that you can use. There's some like natural manuka honey. I mean, dates are extremely sweet. You can get fresh fruit. And again, with time, and this is something that Laura is much more of an expert in than I am, your taste buds physically start to change when you start to eat differently. Eventually, you won't crave those types of foods anymore. Right. The more you incorporate more natural foods in, your taste buds will prefer that.
Now, the good news, as I understand it, is as long as it doesn't have a whole bunch of sugar, if you get some good dark chocolate, that's actually very good, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Cacao is actually really great for your health. It's really high in antioxidants. And if, for instance, like if someone likes smoothies or protein shakes, you add in raw cacao, the actual taste of it naturally is quite bitter. But if you put like a frozen banana or some manuka honey or some raw organic honey, it sweetens it up and it tastes so delicious. You can even make brownies with raw cacao. That last week and they're wonderful.
Well, you broke up just a little bit on that one. Can you repeat that last?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So you can even make brownies with them. And I said I made them last week and they're absolutely wonderful. And you would never, you wouldn't know that it wasn't cocoa, of which there's a difference between cacao and cocoa. You want to buy cacao.
Right. It's actually a superfood.
Not refined. Yeah. Yeah, it's a superfood.
The another big no-no is alcohol.
Yes.
And while it may seem to help with your nerves in the evening, once again, through personal experience, I was in the Navy. Being in the Navy is like getting an advanced degree in alcoholism. So I've known this pretty well. The morning after, it's much worse than if you woke up after being sober all night. So how long does it affect you during the day? And how?
So, go ahead.
I was just going to mutter some more things. Go ahead.
It's not good for your health. It's not good for your mental health. It's a depressant. Yeah. The more you're drinking, the reason why people feel or think that they're relaxing more is because more of their brain is starting to shut down. It doesn't help in any way, especially, again, if you're inclined to having mental health issues or if you've experienced trauma or significant amounts of trauma in your life, I absolutely would not recommend it at all, or just keep it to following the harm reduction kind of model, like 1 or 2 glasses of whatever, and not fully, getting yourself to a place where you're extremely intoxicated, because you're going to feel a lot worse. And it dehydrates you. Many times a lot of really negative emotions can come out. There's this, Sven and I right now, we're in Pittsburgh. There's this one part of town called the South Side here that, sometimes people make jokes about, girls sitting outside and crying on the streets and then the men fighting each other. And that's because the alcohol is such a depressant that women tend to manifest it as sadness and in tears, hence the crying. But men tend to manifest it as anger and aggression, so hence the fighting each other.
Yeah, been there.
No. Oh, yeah.
So we talked about things you have to cut out. Let's talk about something you can add in if you don't do this already.
Yeah.
Meditation. I mean, we talked about movement, but there's also stillness. Talk about the power of meditation. What actually happens to the brain when you meditate for a long time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's different stages of brain waves that your brain can actually go into when you're in a meditative state. So the first state that you go into is an alpha state. And this is where the left and the right hemispheres of your brain are synchronized. Your heart rate starts to go down. Your blood pressure starts to go down. And your mind is open than usual, meaning that if you're listening to new information, you tend to believe it more and you tend to retain it more, even if it's information that you typically don't believe or typically don't think. So if you are able to get yourself to an alpha brainwave state and then start to think about more positive thoughts, or if you start to listen to more positive words while you're doing this, you're much more likely to believe it, and it actually helps you to change the way you think a lot faster. So I recommend a lot of our clients, and our team recommends our clients, when they're starting out with doing meditations, to do guided meditation that helps to kind of jumpstart this for you. So we absolutely love Paul Santi Z's meditations. If you go on YouTube and search Paul Santi Z, or on Google, Google, Spotify, Amazon, his stuff is everywhere, and they're absolutely wonderful. Some of them are a bit more clinical. There's one that I know he has, it's more for anxiety and depression. And then he has another great one called Mind Silence, which is great for anyone who suffers from having an overactive mind or someone who worries a lot. And then he also has ones for people that identify as more spiritual, different ones that are more like chakra alignments and different ones like that too. So he has something for everyone, whether you're a beginner or whether you're more advanced.
Santi Z is the last name.
Yes.
Can you spell that?
Yes. Paul Santi Z. Yes. Santisi.
Okay, great.
He has a huge audience. I think he has like millions of people that listen to his meditations across the world.
That's great.
It's really good stuff. Yeah, just be sure to have headphones when you listen to his meditations. He uses something called binaural beats, which is one of the reasons why his meditations are so powerful and so effective. He's one frequency in one ear and a varying frequency or different frequency in another ear. And because your brain can't interpret the two different frequencies, it takes the average, and then hence the left and the right hemispheres of your brain are then synchronized, and then you're in the alpha brainwave state. So it kind of does that for you. So many times when we have clients that have never meditated before, or they don't know like how to meditate, or they feel like it's such a big feat, whenever they try one of his, they find that they're able to relax a lot more easily compared to whenever they try to do it themselves. Yeah.
These are all great points. And I just want to make sure people that are watching or listening don't get too caught up in the idea that all of these things may be new for some people. And some of them have heard this kind of stuff, okay, do yoga, meditate, breathe, get exercise, and they still can't find a way to do that because it's unfamiliar or whatever. I think the good news is, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, is that just doing things that make you happy also has a similar kind of an effect. Is that true? Like gardening or playing games or craft, being creative, making music? Are these also effective tools?
Oh, absolutely. Because again, it's the joy and the pleasure of doing something that makes you feel good. And so then your brain releases feel-good chemicals, which is fantastic. So then it's really considering, what do you enjoy? What are your hobbies? And many times then we hear, well, I don't like anything, or I don't have any hobbies. My hobby is work, or my hobby is my business. I hear that all the time. Then we ask, okay.
Neither of us know anything about that, though.
I don't know what you're talking about. Then we ask, what did you enjoy to do when you were a child? And then typically a lot more creative stuff comes up then.
Yeah. And I think these are things that also kind of suspend time for a bit. It takes you out of that present moment, and that it actually puts you into the present moment. It takes you out of worrying about the future or fretting about the past. You get into that timeless space of just doing something you so absolutely love.
Yes, there's a psychologist, I forget if this is Martin Seligman. He was the guy who created positive psychology, And exactly what you talked about, that state of flow of you're just enjoying yourself so much that you lose all perception of time. You can do whatever you're doing forever, and you're just really in the moment, and you're just loving every second of it. Anything that you can do to increase the flow states in your life, increasing the frequency of them. His research showed that just makes you a happier person, which, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out, but still, like, you know, the more things that you do to make you happy, the happier of a person you're going to be.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Now, if one of the things that makes you happy is going out shopping, maybe this is not the actual best time to be doing that.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, there's some, what I like to think of, these are attitudes to contemplate.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me how effective you found this with your clients. But many people know the Serenity Prayer.
Yeah.
And the key line there is, allow me to accept the things I cannot change. And you find this all through many of the spiritual traditions is, if you can't change it, just let it go. I mean, just compartmentalize somehow, or just don't dwell on that. Any tips around that, how to accept things that you can't change?
Oh gosh, that is the $1 million question. This
You'd be making a lot more money if you had a better answer, right?
Well, the challenge then, this is different for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey and everyone's process of letting go is so different. There's really no cookie cutter answer. Some people, in order to feel like they can let go, they need to confront a lot of things from their past. Other people like to do that through writing. Other people like to do that in meditation. Some people, then want to, you talked about the compartmentalizing. And is it compartmentalizing, or is it repressing and then putting that off and then dealing with it 30 years down the road? You want to do your best to not compartmentalize, but rather to address the situation. Because when you compartmentalize, then you're still really holding on to it, but pretending like it's not there.
Gotcha.
Like having an elephant in your living room and hanging out with your friends and pretending like the elephant isn't there.
Yeah.
So for everyone, we treat this so differently because everyone has a different idea of how they want to work on letting things go. But even just the most general advice that I could give is to at least acknowledge that this is the thing that I need to work on letting go. Because when you acknowledge that there's something wrong, then you're really in a place where you can make some changes. Because how can you hit a target if you don't know what the target is or where it is or how far away it is? So at least identifying it and then going from there.
Is journaling a good tool for this? If you write things out and put all your anger on a page, and then close the book, does that help?
Yeah, that can be really helpful. It absolutely can be. For our clients that really enjoy the process of writing, it's very powerful. But we advise, if that's what they want to do, then there's something very cathartic about getting out all this negative emotion and then like burning the paper outside, or like ripping it into shreds and allowing that anger out while you're ripping it up. It's a once and for all kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
a lot of rituals around that in many of the spiritual traditions.
Oh yeah.
And fire is always a big part of those kinds of things, to burn it away.
Yeah, the transmutation into, the universe or into light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing that I thought might be interesting for us and for people to contemplate, if you're in an unhealthy position or spending too much time fretting and worrying and wondering and that sort of thing, is there's a marvelous book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's really quite simple. The four agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. I mean, each of these is just, we could spend an hour on each one of these things, but
Mm-hmm.
I've found in my life that the more I can live by this, if I give my word to do something, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
In the business sense, it would be under promise and over deliver is the way you would think of that. Don't make promises you're not going to be able to keep, and always do your best. But to me, the real big ones are, don't take anything personally, and don't make assumptions. Because when people are nasty to you or mean to you or evil to you, it oftentimes has nothing to do with you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, people treat others the way that they feel. So if they feel like crap, if they feel insecure, if they feel angry, they're going to treat others in that type of way. Absolutely. It's projection.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
And especially during these times here in the middle of our pandemic, a lot of people are going to be pretty snappy out there fighting over toilet paper and everything else,
Yeah.
But this is where the resilience, we'll get back to the resilience, is if somebody is mean to you or nasty or impolite, if you have a very resilient nervous system, it's much easier to just brush it off and say, oh, they must be having a bad day.
Mm-hmm. And to remind yourself of the reality that, again, people treat others in the way that they're feeling, and that it's a projection of them, and it's not a reflection of who I am as a person.
Yeah. Well, when we have all this enforced alone time, this is really a prime time to start practicing some of these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you seen an uptick in your business?
Yeah, a lot of people have been calling, and a lot of people are in a place now, again, with the increased time that we have, that they're really ready to start working on themselves and to make major life changes. And we are really happy to be able to waive a lot of copays for clients with specific insurance companies. So if a client has a commercial UPMC plan, Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Optum, Aetna, and United Behavioral Health or United Healthcare. If their employer if the commercial plan is employer funded, then we're going to be able to waive their copay for the time being. So, and the other lovely thing is all of our commercial plans are now covering for virtual counseling. Before, this was not the case. So a lot of people had to pay out of pocket to be able to do virtual counseling. So this is such a wonderful time, especially if your insurance company is gonna take care of it for you. Why would you not take advantage of this time and take advantage of, them helping you out to spend more time to work on yourself? And consider too is we're so out of whack with our routines at this point that this is the perfect time to start to create a new and more positive one. And our providers are more than happy to help you with that.
That's a great point. Most people have a lot of difficulty with unstructured time.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect time to develop new habits. Get used to making that smoothie in the morning. Get used to getting out there and doing that walk in the morning or at noontime. Just a final thought. I mean, this is a great challenge for many people individually and us as a society. I have this feeling that there's going to be a lot of very good and positive things that come out of this once we're through all of the scary parts. Do you have any sense or predictions around that?
That's a great question, and to be completely honest, I don't really know. My feeling is some good will come out of it, but I'm not entirely sure what's gonna happen.
You're not into prognostications then?
No. Definitely not.
Other than you're getting married in December,
yeah.
know that's going to happen.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's about the only thing I know that's going to happen this year. Everything else is pretty up in the air.
Well, your specialty is the present moment, and
yes,
learning how to deal with the present moment. And
yes,
you've really given us a lot of good pointers and a lot of good things to think about around that whole issue.
Thank you.
Well, is there any last point that you wanted to make before we sign off? Anything you think we didn't cover, or anything you want to emphasize about all of these issues?
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest thing is, again, if you are at a place where you're ready to work on yourself, you're sick and tired of feeling the way that you're feeling, you know that you can feel better in that, but then you don't really know what to do, please give us a call. Our team is more than happy to help. Makin Wellness is the highest rated outpatient therapy center in the Pittsburgh area. So we have a great reputation. We have a great ability to help our clients. And we're currently seeing all of our clients virtually for the time being. So as long as you're a PA resident, we're able to see you virtually. We can verify your insurance beforehand to make sure that your insurance is going to cover it, and we'll take wonderful care of you.
Oh, that's wonderful. We'll make sure we put your website and all of the insurance plans that you have the zero copay with up on the information on our YouTube channel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And this is just for the time being. So I'm not sure by the time that people end up watching this.
Podcasts are forever.
Podcasts are forever. So by the time you end up watching this, it might not be a $0 copay, but keep in mind that we are in network with all commercial plans.
Right. So we're right
all commercial insurance plans.
We're here in the first week of April of 2020.
Yes.
So this is the reality right now. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a really wonderful conversation.
So thank you so much for having me on, Sven. It was wonderful as always.